You dared to erase my wife's name from her rightful place." The words sliced through the opulent dining room of Vivre Blanc, a temple of luxury where crystal chandeliers gleam and marble floors reflect privilege. A black female professor, poised and brilliant, stands humiliated. Her reservation dismissed, her presence questioned, her dignity challenged by a calculated act of exclusion. Confronted by a cold manager's smirk and a socialite's entitlement, she faces silent judgments and whispered biases. Yet, in this charged moment, her husband, a commanding figure and the restaurant's majority shareholder, steps in, his presence shifting the room's gravity. Will justice prevail? Can one woman's grace dismantle a system of prejudice? Join us to uncover a reckoning that redefines power. Subscribe to our channel for the latest stories of courage and share where you're watching from in the comments. Stay until the end. You won't see this ending coming. The invitation lay on Amina Nkosi's polished mahogany desk, its ivory paper catching the morning light like a quiet challenge. Gold-embossed lettering traced the names of Cynthia and Richard Langford, a power couple whose hedge fund empire and real estate ventures dominated the city's elite circles. The occasion, their daughter's birthday, a celebration to be held at Vivre Blanc, the city's most exclusive restaurant, where reservations were as coveted as a seat at the table of power itself. Amina, a distinguished black professor, renowned for her intellect and poise, felt the weight of the envelope in her hands. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a summons to a world that often measured worth by unspoken rules she had spent her life defying. Her husband, Jordan Moore, a white entrepreneur and the majority shareholder of Vivre Blanc, had mentioned the event over breakfast 2 weeks prior. "They asked if we'd come," he'd said, his tone casual, fork pausing over a plate of poached eggs. "I confirmed for both of us." Amina had tilted her head, her dark eyes narrowing slightly. "Both?" she'd asked, sensing the subtext. Jordan's smile was easy, confident. "You'll enjoy it. It's just a formality." But Amina knew better. Formality in rooms like Vivre Blanc was never just formality. It was a performance, a test, a ledger of who belonged and who was merely tolerated. Jordan would be late, tied up in boardroom negotiations across town. Amina didn't mind. She preferred to arrive alone, to walk into spaces on her own terms. She chose her attire with intention, a flowing white silk dress that draped her frame with effortless elegance. No gaudy jewelry, no designer labels shouting status. Her natural curls were swept into a low bun, each coil a quiet rebellion against the polished conformity of the world she was about to enter. Amina didn't dress to impress. She dressed to exist, to occupy space with the dignity she'd earned through years of navigating rooms that questioned her right to be there. The city buzzed outside her window, a sprawling metropolis of glass towers and ambition. Vivre Blanc sat at its heart, a fortress of luxury where the elite gathered to sip vintage wines and trade influence under the guise of civility. Amina called a car, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood as she left her apartment. The ride was smooth, the driver silent, and as the car pulled up to the restaurant's gleaming entrance, the midday sun glinted off its chrome and glass facade, casting reflections that seemed to demand reverence. A valet in a crisp charcoal uniform opened her door, his eyes flickering over her, not with hostility, but with a quick, practiced scan that weighed her presence against the unspoken hierarchy of the place. Amina stepped out, her chin high, her stride measured but unyielding. The air carried the faint scent of lavender from the nearby courtyard, a curated touch that masked the weight of exclusion woven into the restaurant's very walls. Inside, Vivre Blanc was a cathedral of opulence. Marble floors gleamed like mirrors beneath her sandals, reflecting the warm glow of a massive chandelier that hung like a frozen firework. The air was thick with the aroma of truffle oil and chilled champagne, a sensory reminder that this was a place where privilege was both currency and armor. The staff, all white and American, moved with choreographed precision, their smiles polished but guarded. As Amina crossed the threshold, she felt the weight of eyes, subtle, fleeting but unmistakable. A waiter adjusting a tablecloth paused, his glance lingering a moment too long. A hostess whispered to a colleague, their words inaudible but their meaning clear in the tilt of their heads. Amina approached the hostess podium, where a young woman with a tight blonde bun stood, her name tag reading Emily. "Good afternoon," Amina said, her voice calm but resonant, a professor's cadence honed by years of commanding lecture halls. "I'm here for the Langford party. My name should be on the guest list." Emily's smile was tight, almost mechanical, as she opened a leather-bound reservation book. "Let me check," she said, her fingers flipping pages with deliberate slowness. A faint murmur came from behind her, a second hostess leaning in to whisper, "She must be in the wrong place." The words were soft, meant to be private, but Amina's ears caught them like a blade catching light. She stood taller, her expression unchanging. A man at a nearby table, middle-aged and clad in a tailored navy suit, glanced at her before returning to his conversation, dismissing her presence as if she were a shadow passing through. The room continued its hum of clinking glasses and murmured deals, but Amina felt the undercurrent, a silent inventory of her skin, her dress, her solitary arrival. She wasn't nervous. She was acutely aware of how rooms like this operated, how they sifted guests through invisible filters of race and status before granting them a seat. Emily's eyes scanned the page again, her hesitation stretching into seconds. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her smile thinning. "I don't see your name here." Amina's gaze didn't waver. "It should be there," she said, her tone even but unyielding. "I'm Amina Nkosi, invited by Cynthia and Richard Langford." Emily's fingers paused, her eyes flicking up to meet Amina's, then darting away. "One moment, please," she said, turning to whisper to her colleague again, her movements slow, almost performative, as if to signal that Amina's presence was an inconvenience to be managed. Amina stepped to the side, her hands clasped lightly in front of her, her posture a study in restraint. The room carried on, oblivious or indifferent, but she felt the weight of its judgment pressing against her. The whispers, the glances, the deliberate delay, they were not accidents. They were the architecture of exclusion, built into the very fabric of this gilded space. And yet, Amina stood firm, her dignity a quiet force that refused to bend. "I'm Amina Nkosi," she repeated softly, her voice cutting through the hum of the restaurant. "And I'm on the guest list for the Langford party." Emily's smile faltered, her fingers lingering on the page. The air grew heavier, the moment stretching taut, as if the room itself were holding its breath, waiting to see whether it would open its doors or close them tighter. The air in Vivre Blanc grew heavier, as if the room itself were conspiring to hold Amina Nkosi in place, her dignity a silent anchor against the tide of dismissal. She stood by the hostess podium, her repeated assertion, "I'm Amina Nkosi, and I'm on the guest list for the Langford party," met with Emily's faltering smile and a deliberate pause that stretched into an unspoken verdict. Emily, the young white hostess with a tight blonde bun, flipped through the leather-bound reservation book again, her fingers lingering on the pages with a theatrical slowness. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice coated in a veneer of politeness, "but I still don't see your name." Her eyes flicked up, meeting Amina's briefly before darting away, as if acknowledging her too long might commit some breach of protocol. Amina's expression remained steady, her professor's poise honed by years of navigating spaces that questioned her presence. "My husband, Jordan Moore, confirmed the reservation," she said, her tone calm but edged with a quiet insistence. "It's for table 3 by the garden window." Emily's smile tightened, a micro-expression of discomfort flashing across her face. She lounged toward a second hostess, whispering something inaudible, then turned back to Amina. "If you'll wait just a moment," she said, "we can arrange a seat near the kitchen. It's quieter there." The words landed like a veiled insult, the implication clear. Amina didn't belong in the main dining area, where the city's elite held court under the chandelier's golden glow. Before Amina could respond, the glass doors of Vivre Blanc parted, and Veronica Langley swept in like a storm, clad in crimson silk. A white socialite known for her glittering presence in the city's upper echelons, Veronica moved with the confidence of someone who had never been denied a seat. Her red dress clung to her frame, its boldness a stark contrast to Amina's understated elegance. Emily's demeanor shifted instantly. Her tight smile bloomed into deference, her posture straightening as she stepped forward. "Miss Langley, welcome," she said, her voice warm with recognition. "Your table is ready. Table 3 by the garden window." She gestured toward the very spot Amina had claimed, her words slicing through the air with surgical precision. Amina stood rooted, her breath steady but her chest tightening as she watched Emily lead Veronica across the marble floor. The room's hum of conversation faltered briefly, heads turning to follow the socialite's entrance. Veronica passed Amina without a glance, but at the last moment, her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, a gesture that acknowledged the theft of Amina's place while dismissing its significance. The other guests, all white and dressed in the quiet luxury of tailored suits and designer dresses, observed the scene with a mix of curiosity and pity. A woman at a nearby table leaned toward her companion, whispering, "Probably just a mix-up. She doesn't look like a VIP." The words were soft, almost casual, but they built an invisible wall, relegating Amina to the margins of a space she had every right to occupy. The restaurant's opulence seemed to mock her now, the marble gleaming underfoot, the scent of truffle oil hanging heavy, the chandelier casting its flattering light on everyone but her. A young black waiter, Marcus, adjusted a napkin at a nearby table, his eyes meeting Amina's for a fleeting moment. His gaze carried a quiet empathy, a shared understanding of what it meant to be overlooked in a place like this, but he lowered his head quickly, bound by the unspoken rules of his role. Amina's hands clasped tighter, her nails pressing into her palms, but her face remained composed, a mask of grace forged through years of facing such slights. The weight of the moment pressed harder as Veronica settled into table 3, her laughter ringing out, sharp and carefree, as if the seat had always been hers. A man in a linen suit, the bar, gave a single nod to Emily, who returned it with a conspiratorial glance, as if they were all part of a silent agreement to uphold the room's hierarchy. Amina felt the sting of it. Not anger, but a familiar ache, the exhaustion of being made to feel like an intruder in a space she was invited to enter. She took a step toward the exit, her movements deliberate, her decision to leave a shield against further humiliation. The whispers, the glances, the calculated erasure, they were not new to her, but they cut all the same. As she reached the edge of the foyer, her hand grazing the cool glass of the door, a low, electric hum broke the silence outside. The sound was subtle but unmistakable, the purr of a limited-edition Tesla Roadster pulling to the curb. Amina paused, her fingers tightening on the doorframe, her heart quickening. The room's attention shifted, a ripple of curiosity passing through the guests as the valet hurried to open the car door. Someone was arriving, someone who commanded the space in a way Amina had been denied. The air tightened, poised for a shift, as if the restaurant itself sensed the coming storm. The air tightened, poised for a shift, as if Vivre Blanc itself sensed the coming storm. The low hum of the Tesla Roadster faded outside, replaced by the soft click of polished leather soles against the marble floor. Jordan Moore entered, his presence a quiet thunder that stilled the room without effort. Clad in a charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, he carried no trace of ostentation, only the weight of authority that needed no announcement. His sharp eyes swept the opulent space, past the chandelier's golden glow in the curated elegance of the dining hall, landing on Amina Nkosi, his wife, standing near the exit. Her posture was composed, but the faint tension in her shoulders told him everything. She had been pushed to the margins, her dignity challenged in a place he had helped build. Jordan's expression tightened for a fleeting moment, a flicker of controlled anger beneath his calm exterior. He crossed the foyer in measured strides, each step deliberate, as if carving a path through the room's unspoken hierarchy. The guests, draped in tailored suits and silk dresses, paused mid-sentence, their glasses hovering above the tables. The staff, all white and American, froze in their choreographed dance, sensing a shift in the air. Jordan didn't acknowledge their stares. His focus was singular, locked on Amina, who met his gaze with a quiet strength that mirrored his own. He stopped beside her, his hand brushing her arm in a gesture of solidarity, not possession. Then he turned to the hostess podium, where Emily, the young blonde hostess, stood rigid, her tight smile fraying at the edges. Beside her, Chelsea Grant, the manager, exuded a cold professionalism, her pale features set in a mask of authority. Jordan's voice cut through the silence, low but resonant, carrying the weight of a courtroom verdict. She is Amina Nkosi Moore, my wife, the rightful occupant of Table 3, and I am Jordan Moore, the majority shareholder of Vivre Blanc. The words landed like a gavel, sending a ripple through the room. Heads turned, whispers sparked, and Chelsea's face drained of color, her composure cracking like thin ice. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she clutched the reservation book, her eyes darting to Chelsea for guidance. The guests, momentarily distracted from their wine and small talk, leaned forward, their curiosity tinged with unease. A woman in a pearl necklace at a nearby table covered her mouth, stifling a laugh, as if the scene were a fleeting amusement. Jordan caught the gesture, his gaze sharpening, but he kept his focus on the podium. "Show me the reservation log," he said, his tone even but unyielding. Emily hesitated, her fingers fumbling as she opened the leather-bound book. Chelsea stepped forward, her voice smooth but laced with defensiveness. "There must have been a mix-up, sir," she said, her eyes sliding toward Amina with a fleeting glance that carried a subtle judgment. "We prioritize our regular guests. Perhaps the reservation wasn't properly recorded." The excuse was flimsy, a thinly veiled insinuation that Amina didn't fit the image of Vivre Blanc's clientele. Jordan's brow lifted, his expression unreadable but piercing. "A mix-up," he repeated, the word heavy with skepticism. "If my wife weren't my wife, would her name have magically appeared in that book?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing, exposing the bias woven into Chelsea's words. The woman in the pearl necklace shifted uncomfortably, her amusement fading. A man at the bar, clad in a linen suit, averted his eyes, suddenly engrossed in his drink. The room's elegance felt brittle now, its polished surface cracking under the weight of truth. Emily, under Jordan's unrelenting gaze, turned the reservation book toward him. There, in black ink, was Amina's name, clear, time-stamped and undeniable, crossed out with a single line and replaced with Veronica Langley. Jordan's finger traced the alteration, his silence more damning than any outburst. Chelsea's posture stiffened, her attempt at authority unraveling. "Miss Langley is a valued guest," she said, her voice faltering. "We made a judgment call to accommodate her." The admission was a misstep, a confession of prejudice dressed as protocol. Jordan stepped closer, his presence towering without raising his voice. "A judgment call," he said, each word deliberate. "Based on what? Her appearance? Her name? Her skin?" The questions sliced through the room, stripping away the veneer of civility. Chelsea's lips parted, but no words came. Emily looked down, her hands clutching the podium's edge. The guests, now openly staring, shifted in their seats, the clink of crystal glasses falling silent. A young black waiter, Marcus, lingered near a table, his eyes fixed on the scene with a mix of awe and apprehension, as if witnessing something he'd long known but never dared voice. Jordan's gaze swept the room, taking in the onlookers, their privilege exposed in their uneasy silence. "You chose who gets to sit and who gets erased," he said, his voice steady but laced with steel. "And tonight, Chelsea, you'll explain to the board why my wife was treated as an outsider in a place I own." The declaration reverberated, a promise of reckoning that left the air thick with tension. Chelsea's face was ashen, her authority crumbling under the weight of her own actions. The room held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game it hadn't anticipated. The room held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game it hadn't anticipated. 1 week later, the air in the newly christened Ivory Seat, once Vivre Blanc, felt different, lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled years of pretense. The restaurant had been reborn, its transformation a testament to a reckoning that had shaken its foundations. Gone were the sterile European landscapes that once adorned the walls, replaced by vibrant art celebrating diverse cultures. A mural of jazz musicians in Harlem, a woven tapestry inspired by African textiles, a bold abstract honoring Native American resilience. The lighting, once cold and clinical, now bathed the space in a warm amber glow, inviting rather than interrogating. The reservation system, now digital and transparent, ensured no name could be erased without a trace. This was no longer a fortress of exclusivity. It was a space reimagined for equity. Amina Nkosi Moore stepped through the glass doors, her presence commanding without effort. She wore an ivory silk dress that flowed like a quiet river, her natural curls cascading freely over her shoulders, each strand a declaration of unapologetic authenticity. Beside her, Jordan Moore, in a slate-grey suit, walked with the same understated authority that had silenced the room days before. The staff, a mix of familiar faces and new hires, stood straighter as they entered, their eyes reflecting not deference but respect. Marcus, the young black waiter who had once offered Amina a fleeting glance of empathy, now stood at the podium as the manager, his posture confident, his blazer embroidered with the new emblem of the Ivory Seat. His promotion was no token gesture. It was a recognition of talent long suppressed by the old regime. The dining hall, though still elegant, felt alive in a way it hadn't before. The clink of glasses was softer, the conversations less performative. As Amina and Jordan crossed the marble floor, heads turned, not with curiosity or judgment, but with a quiet acknowledgement of their presence. A man in a tailored jacket, who had witnessed the events of the previous week, lowered his gaze as Amina passed, his nod a silent admission of his earlier complicity. The room's energy had shifted. It no longer belonged to those who wielded entitlement like a weapon. It belonged to those who had fought to be seen. Marcus greeted them with a warm smile, his voice steady. "Dr. Nkosi, Mr. Moore, welcome to the Ivory Seat. Your table is ready." He led them to table 3, the infamous spot by the garden window, now adorned with a small bronze plaque that read, "Dr. Amina Nkosi Moore's table, where dignity redefined the rules." Amina's lips curved slightly, not in triumph, but in recognition of the weight of that moment. She sat, her movements deliberate, her presence filling the space like a melody long overdue. Jordan took his seat across from her, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet pride. A young white server, Sarah, approached, her demeanor nervous but genuine. She placed the menus down with care, her voice trembling slightly with reverence. "Tonight's menu," she said, "is inspired by women who've led with courage, like you, Dr. Nkosi." Amina raised an eyebrow, her smile softening. The menu's first page bore a note. This course honors cultures once overlooked in rooms like this. The words were a subtle nod to the restaurant's past, a reminder of the biases it had once perpetuated. Amina's fingers traced the text, her mind registering the significance, not an apology, but an acknowledgement. Marcus lingered nearby, his new role suiting him like a second skin. He leaned in slightly, his voice low but clear. "I was told to talk less to keep guests comfortable," he said, his eyes meeting Amina's. "Now I'm allowed to be myself." The confession was raw, a glimpse into the silent toll of working in a space that had once demanded conformity. Amina nodded, her gaze warm but piercing. "You were always enough, Marcus," she said. "They just didn't see it." Jordan leaned back, his smile subtle but unmistakable. "You didn't just reclaim your seat," he said to Amina, his voice a quiet rumble. "You made them rebuild the entire table." The words carried a weight that resonated beyond their corner, a testament to the change Amina's presence had sparked. The other guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, ate in near silence, their usual chatter subdued. A woman at a nearby table, who had once whispered about Amina's place, now sipped her wine quietly, her eyes averted. As the first course arrived, dishes named for trailblazing women from history, the camera pulled back, revealing the glowing logo of the ivory seat against the city's night sky. The bronze plaque at table 3 glinted under the candlelight, a permanent marker of a battle won not with anger, but with unyielding dignity. Amina and Jordan raised their glasses, not in celebration of victory, but in affirmation of a truth. The right to exist in any space was not a privilege. It was a right. Beyond the window, the city pulsed with life, unaware that within these walls a new standard had been set, one that bore Amina's name. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Amina's story, a tale of dignity, resilience, and the courage to redefine the rules. Her fight for a seat at the table reminds us that true change begins when we refuse to accept erasure. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How did this story resonate with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where someone stood up against silent injustice? Share your reflections in the comments below and let us know where you're tuning in from. Your voice matters, and we're grateful for your presence in this community. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories of courage and transformation. Until next time, stay bold, stay kind, and never hesitate to claim your rightful place. We'll see you soon for another story that just might change how you see the world.